Stop trying to explain yourself. Stop making excuses for your choices. Stop attempting to get people to understand your silence, your aims, or your limits. At that point, everything changes. You can't be controlled by other people anymore. You don't waste your efforts trying to please others. You can't touch your tranquility anymore. Marcus Aurelius stated, "If something outside of you makes you unhappy, it's not the thing itself that hurts you, but how you see it." You don't have to explain yourself to the world. You just have to live your truth. In this video, you'll find out why ceasing explanations offers you power, distance, and a sense of purpose. You'll also see how your life changes when your deeds speak louder than your words. Stop acting. Live your life. From now on, everything will be different. Number 1. The trap of constant justification. As children, we are taught to seek acceptance from a variety of sources, including our parents, teachers, friends, and society. We are instructed to provide an explanation for why we think differently, why we behave differently, and why we desire what we do not have. Over the course of time, this pattern of explanation turns into a reflex. As soon as you encounter opposition, you instantly begin to attempt to justify yourself. In order to demonstrate your objectives, you want to be understood and loved by others. However, Epictetus cautioned against making such a mistake. He made the following statement: "If you want to improve, you should be content to be thought foolish and stupid." To put it another way, if you truly desire peace, you must submit to the possibility of being misunderstood. Constantly justifying your actions only serves to bind you to the viewpoints of other people. You are no longer living according to your principles. Rather, you are acting in order to receive approval. As you continue to elaborate, your level of self-confidence decreases. When you come to the realization that your life does not require the approval of an audience, freedom begins to emerge. It is possible to let other people misinterpret you while still moving forward with a calm and confident attitude. One of the most suffocating mental prisons a person may be incarcerated in is the trap of always justifying their actions. In reality, it is fear that is hiding behind something that appears to be something else, such as humility, politeness, or communication. Fear of being looked down upon, fear of being deemed incorrect, and fear of not being accepted by the majority of people. Furthermore, the irony is that the more you try to justify your life, the less it feels like it is yours overall. You begin to edit your truth in order to make it more comprehensible for other people. When you want to fit into the comfort zone of another person, you will soften your opinions, you will downplay your aspirations, and you will modify your dreams. You are gradually losing your voice because you have substituted approval for honesty in your communication. Marcus Aurelius thought about this human frailty when he stated, "It never ceases to amaze me that we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This is a reflection on the fact that we all love ourselves more than other people. Give that some thought. Because you are aware of your goals, you are aware of your challenges. On the other hand, you continue to yield to the influence of the opinions of other people. Stoics held the belief that the urge to be understood is a kind of the ego that is more subtle. It's a desire to manage how other people perceive you, to mold their thoughts in a way that is favorable to you. Then again, that is not strength. Such earnestness is actually a disguised form of insecurity. Epictetus believed that true power is achieved by mastering what you can control, such as your thoughts, actions, and emotions, and letting go of everything else, including how other people interpret those things. It is a form of power transfer whenever you attempt to explain yourself to someone who has reservations about you. You give them the authority to decide whether your decisions are legitimate, whether your motives are pure, and whether your life is acceptable by your actions. People will constantly find new reasons to question you. So once you start down that road, it will never end, because they will always find someone new to question. The ancient Greek philosopher Seneca once said the following: "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." The majority of the anxiety that you experience when you feel the need to explain yourself is not caused by actual danger. Rather, it is caused by the perceived disapproval of others. The truth is that you are not actually protecting yourself from other people. Rather, you are protecting yourself from your own fears. However, what happens when you discontinue the explanation? When anxiousness is replaced with silence, you take into account the fact that people's comprehension is not required, but rather voluntary. As time goes on, you begin to have faith in your own judgment. Rather of waiting for a round of applause, you take action without broadcasting, move without justification, and make decisions without holding back. At that point, true peace will have begun. The fact of the matter is that people can only comprehend an individual to the extent that they comprehend themselves. Your serenity will be transformed into arrogance, your boundaries into pride, and your peace into apathy if you have a narrow-minded perspective. Allow them to do so. The people who are supposed to walk with you will never require an explanation because they will identify your goals based on the actions you take, not on the words you say. Put an end to your excessive explanations. Put an end to attempting to make people see your heart while they are not looking at everything. There is no courthouse in your life, and you are not being tried for anything. And justification for your evolution is not something that you owe to the world. When you finally stop trying to explain who you are able to break free from the confines of perception and enter the liberating ground of self-trust. When you cease acting in a play that was written by someone else, you initiate the process of becoming the author of your own play. At this point, every Stoic, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, would agree that this is the point at which genuine freedom is established. Number 2. Silence commands more power than explanation. Those who thrive on control are more susceptible to being uneasy when silence is present. When others stop trying to understand you, they lose their ability to interact with you. Due to the fact that you are no longer playing their game, they are unable to manipulate you through the use of guilt or argument. The words of Seneca stated, "He who is brave is free." It is bravery in action to remain silent. It is not about paying no attention to other people. Rather, it is about choose where to focus your energy. Instead of repressing their feelings, the Stoics advocated for emotional temperance. They instilled in you the importance of speaking up when it is required, but never from a position of defensiveness or desperation during such times. Your silence demonstrates that you are firmly rooted in your choices. That you do not seek permission to exist is communicated to other people. Maintaining your composure in the face of others' demands for answers is a display of strength that they are unable to fathom. The world places a much higher value on quiet than it does on justification. Considering that justification is a form of approval, silence is a declaration of certainty. Silence is one of the manifestations of strength that is misinterpreted the most today. Silence is an unusual feeling in a world that is obsessed with reaction, with quick responses, loud opinions, and emotional outbursts. However, silence is not the same thing as absence for those who comprehend its power. Those who rely on chaos to exert control over others will find it very upsetting to experience presence, since it is focused, deliberate, and present. Once you stop trying to explain yourself, you will no longer contribute to the noise. Persons that derive pleasure from arguing, gossiping, or emotionally manipulating others will no longer have access to you. They have come to the realization that they are no longer able to manipulate you through accusations or demands for clarification. Your silence creates a barrier that they are unable to overcome. During this period of silence, they first become aware of something that they are unable to precisely describe: your power. According to a quote attributed to Marcus Aurelius, "The best revenge is not to be more like your enemy." When someone makes an attempt to agitate you, to drag you into explanations that are not necessary, or to engage you in emotional discussions, the Stoic reaction includes being silent. It's not because you're a vulnerable person. Rather, it's because you refuse to bring your mental state down. It is clear to you that reaction is the source of energy, and stillness is the return of energy. One of the lessons that Epictetus imparted to his pupils was that the wise man would only speak when his words were superior to his silence. Stoic communication is characterized by being measured, thoughtful, and devoid of the urge to justify one's point. As you become more disciplined in your stillness, your thoughts will become as pure as crystal. When you see how much effort is wasted attempting to explain things to people who don't even want to comprehend, you start to realize how much energy is squandered. Indifference is not the same thing as silence. Rather, silence is a sign of maturity. What this indicates is that you have outgrown the urge to justify every action you do. That the truth does not require constant defending is something that you have learned. Unlike lies which scream for attention, it behaves in a peaceful and independent manner. A quote attributed to Seneca states that to be everywhere is to be nowhere. The same is true for speech. If you are continuously explaining yourself to everyone, your words will lose their potency everywhere you go. Nevertheless, when you make the decision to remain silent, your presence starts to speak for itself. In addition, silence possesses a more profound spiritual power of its own. You learn to listen when you stop explaining yourself and not to the noise that other people make. Rather, you learn to listen to your own intuition. The Stoics held the belief that wisdom is not the result of reaction but rather of study. The opportunity to think clearly, to act thoughtfully, and to live according to your values rather than your emotions is afforded to you while you are in silence. And this is where the paradox lies. The more quiet you become, the more people begin to notice yourself. They start to suspect what you are thinking, what you are aware of, and what it is that gives you that sense of peaceful confidence. Even though you have not spoken a word, your silence is beginning to demand respect. When you don't speak much, your presence conveys a multitude of messages. To a greater extent, your outcomes will speak for themselves if you explain less. This guiding idea is more important than it has ever been in today's world. It seems that everyone is talking, whether it is online, in debates, or in endless justifications. Nevertheless, you stand out when you choose to remain silent. In a world that divulges too much information, you become a mystery. People are unable to readily categorize you. They are unable to anticipate your actions or take into account your feelings. You are now self-contained, as the Stoics would say, being unaffected by the noise that comes from the outside world. In another of his writings, Seneca stated, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." In addition, learning how to live includes knowing when it is appropriate to be silent. There are some accusations that do not warrant a defense. There are certain questions that do not warrant an answer. It is not necessary to provide clarification for every misunderstanding. This is not the same thing as disengagement. Sometimes silence is wisdom. Silence accomplishes what words frequently are unable to. It creates a space between you and the drama that is going on. It protects your tranquility from being disturbed. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to live by my truth. It declares to the entire world, to the world. You will achieve a level of mental freedom that the majority of people will never feel if you are able to master that. The pandemonium causes you to become calm. When provoked, a grounded person. There is silence when the world calls for noise. And it is at this point that people begin to realize that you have become somebody that is quite uncommon, a person who no longer uses explanations, but who consistently commands respect. Number 3, the freedom of self-validation. It is only when you stop trying to explain yourself that you begin to trust yourself. Since then, you have stopped asking the world, "Is this okay?" Instead, you should ask yourself, "Does this reflect my core beliefs and principles?" According to what Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, it never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. The paradox of insecurity is that we live in a state of intense need for the acceptance of others, while simultaneously neglecting our own wisdom. Self-sufficiency was the source of happiness and freedom, according to the Stoic schools of thought. What this means is that you must find peace within yourself, rather than relying on the understanding of others. After you have finished explaining, you will no longer be pleading for approval. No longer do you live to satisfy others, rather you live to advance. You start to place a higher importance on your own voice than on the cacophony from the outside world. At that point, you will begin to experience what the Stoics referred to as ataraxia, which is the tranquility that comes from having a mind that is not disturbed. The freedom to validate oneself is one of the most profound forms of inner liberty that a person can experience throughout their lifetime. At this point, your sense of value will no longer be dependent on how other people respond to you. It will be the time when your internal compass will become more powerful than the cacophony of the outside world. Due to the fact that they spend their entire lives attempting to live up to the expectations of others, the majority of people never reach this point. It is the applause that gives them their confidence, the approval that gives them their identity, and the acceptance that gives them their peace of mind. The Stoics, on the other hand, cautioned that this form of peace is precarious. In his writings, Seneca expressed the idea that he who seeks approval from others places his peace in their keeping. Think about it. If the tranquility you experience is dependent on the actions of other people, then you will always be at the mercy of their feelings, their opinions, and their misunderstandings. Your self-assurance takes a nosedive the moment they express disapproval. On the other hand, you will regain your peace of mind once you learn to validate yourself. It is not hubris to validate oneself. Rather, it is alignment. It indicates that you are aware of your goals. It is possible that other people will never comprehend the reasons behind your actions, your decisions, and the pathways that you choose to take. It is not necessary for you to provide an explanation of your direction to anyone who is not intended to walk beside you. Throughout his life, Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to be content to live simply and with reason according to nature. In essence, this is the essence of Stoic freedom: living by reason rather than response, living by principle rather than popularity. You begin to modify your life in order to make it more appealing to other people when you rely on external affirmation. Prior to making decisions, you pause because you are afraid of being judged or rejected. When you try to fit into the comfort zones of other people, you narrow your lens of vision. However, when you stop trying to explain yourself, a significant change takes place. You start to trust the judgment that you have within yourself. You come to the realization that no one else has experienced what you have, fought the battles you have fought, or carried the responsibilities that you have endured. If they have the final say in your decisions, why should they have that say? Epictetus is credited with saying, "No man is free because he is not master of himself." Emotional independence, or the capacity to realize one's own worth without the need for anybody else to validate it, is the foundation upon which successful mastery is built. Self-validation enables you to make decisions with self-assurance, to leave without causing any disturbance, and to maintain your composure even when you are misunderstood. You no longer aim to be liked. Rather, you seek to see if your ideals are aligned with those of others. A state that the Stoics referred to as ataraxia, which is the calmness of a mind that is not disturbed. It is not about living without feeling, but rather about live your life without being disturbed. When you stop looking for permission to exist, you will suddenly find yourself in a state of quiet certainty. As time goes on, you start to understand that approval is a changing target. If you please one individual, another will make a negative comment. When you prevail in one dispute, another one will start. When, on the other hand, your tranquility originates from inside, you no longer have to seek outside approval, since you have already discovered acceptance within your own heart. Self-validation leads to a more profound level of concentration as well. When you reach the point where you no longer live to impress, you begin to live to evolve. There is a shift in your energy from attempting to explain yourself to growing yourself. Rather than seeking attention, you engage in activities such as reading, reflecting, and growing. In your life, you will find that becoming is more important than proving something. This subtle alteration is what makes everything different. People who rely on the approval of others are like leaves. They are readily swayed by every gust of opinion. Those who validate themselves, on the other hand, are like rooted trees. They are sturdy and steady, and they are not swayed by occasional storms. According to Seneca, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man can be perfected without trials. This is a great statement. Times in which you are alone yourself, in which you refuse to justify your development to people who are only interested in seeing you as a lesser person, are the times that shape your confidence. Self-validation is a skill that, once mastered, will completely transform your emotional landscape. Stop acting in a reactionary manner. You are not being crushed by criticism. Praise does not make you feel better. People are perplexed by the quiet confidence with which you go through the world because they are unable to determine what it is that controls you after you have lost control. The answer is straightforward. Nothing takes place outside of you. One day you will cease living for approval, and that day will be the day you stop explaining who you are. The moment you decide to quit living for the approval of others is the moment you will finally begin to live in peace. What the Stoics meant by freedom was not the freedom to do whatever you want, but rather the freedom to no longer require permission to be who you are. This is the freedom that they embraced. Number 4. Why explaining yourself weakens your presence. Every time you try to convince someone who has reservations about you that you are right, you unwittingly bring your vibration down. In order to take your place in the court of their judgment, you must first step down from the throne of your serenity. You begin answering questions that were never meant to be answered. Questions that were not created to understand you, but rather to test your knowledge and abilities. When you do this, you are giving up a little bit more of your power with each passing moment. The moment you begin to explain, you validate their disbelief in what you are saying. As opposed to focusing your energy inward, you direct it outward. You stop living your truth and start acting it out for the purpose of gaining approval. When you do this, you will lose the peaceful strength that comes from having knowledge within yourself. And somebody who is deeply rooted in who they are does not make a hasty effort to be comprehended. It is common knowledge that explanations tend to lessen the impact, while silence tends to amplify it. The words, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be," were written by Marcus Aurelius in his book Meditations. The phrase, "Be one." To put it simply, the Stoic ideal was to embody rather than to convince. As soon as you are forced to explain who you are to another person, you have already altered your identity. Stoics lived in a world of action rather than explanation, because they knew that truth that is shown through action is unshakable, whereas truth that is defended via words is unstable. "Don't explain your philosophy," Epictetus said, capturing this idea with an impeccable clarity. "Put it into action." Not only was this a rule for living, but it was also a recommendation for poetry. He was of the opinion that if your philosophy required something to be verbally justified, then it was not really lived. It is not required to provide an explanation when your actions are in accordance with your ideals. It is possible that people will not always understand you, but they will always feel that you are honest. In addition, Seneca cautioned against the pervasive vanity that lies concealed under the requirement to explain oneself. In the letters that he wrote to Lucilius, he made the observation that a wise man does not seek acknowledgement or comprehension, but rather alignment with virtue. Ego is the part of ourselves that is yearning to be seen, to be approved of, and to be validated. The need to explain is sometimes disguised as clarity, but underneath it lies the ego. Seneca referred to this as a waste of emotional energy, saying, "A great mind, rather than becoming strong through explanation, becomes strong through endurance." There is a point at which you start to negotiate your worth in the marketplace of opinions when you explain too much things. Consider the following. Whenever you explain your decisions, your silence, or your boundaries, you allow people to sit in judgment of your inner world. This is something you should keep in mind for a moment. You just give them the authority to interpret something that does not require interpretation. Stoics, on the other hand, held the belief that the judgment of others rightfully belongs to them and not to you. Your sole responsibility is to live in accordance with reason and virtue. It is not your responsibility to make your path understandable to everyone. You become less mysterious as you reveal more information about yourself. And strength lies in the unknown. Restraint is synonymous with mystery. In situations where your ego wishes to protect itself, it means having the strength to keep your mouth shut. By saying, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself," Marcus Aurelius was referring to the same kind of energy that we are discussing here. Tolerance means allowing someone to think whatever they want to think. Maintaining your dignity by not pursuing their comprehension is what we mean when we talk about remaining strict. The Stoics were aware of the fact that those who live by explanation are weak to the point of weakness, since they are governed by perception rather than principle. The one who is required to provide an explanation for his composure, his distance, his choices, or his quiet is an individual who has not yet achieved a state of inner peace. Being emotionally detached is not the same thing as being truly tranquil. Rather, it is the realization that you do not owe others your emotional honesty. Seneca taught that you can only control how you react to what other people think when you are in a situation. To add insult to injury, there are occasions when the most effective response is none at all. There is no such thing as avoidance. Silence is authority. Clearly, your time, energy, and attention are far too valuable to be squandered on the futile endeavor of persuading those who are blind to see. Those who are continually explaining themselves lose presence because they value proving themselves more than being themselves. The focus shifts from personal development to the pursuit of affirmation, and they go from living in truth to seeking praise for it. However, the Stoics held the belief that virtue does not require an audience. The consequences of a disciplined mind speak for themselves. They demonstrate serenity in the midst of confusion, patience in the face of pressure, and tranquility in the midst of misunderstanding. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself on a daily basis. Apart from that, there is no further requirement. The man who is aware of himself does not require a witness. his composure, his self-control, and his unwavering conviction do more to convey his message than any explanation could ever hope to. Therefore, the next time someone criticizes your decisions, questions your silence, or makes fun of your discipline, you should fight the impulse to justify yourself. Please allow your silence to speak for itself. A room that is full with disorder will be filled with the sound of your tranquility. Something that your words could never describe will be explained by your consistency. Due to the fact that genuine power does not engage in debate, nothing is explained by it. The pursuit of comprehension is not pursued. For all intents and purposes, it is undisturbed, unbothered, and indisputable. Number 5, detachment makes you unshakable. At the minute that you stop explaining who you are, a subtle transition starts to take place. Your detachment begins, not from life itself, but rather from the illusion. When you do this, you break the unseen links that were holding your peace to the judgments of other people. Not only does this detachment make you feel cold, but it also makes you feel free. Once you reach this point, you will no longer feel the need to be understood and will instead begin to be unshakable. When you stop seeking confirmation, the noise that is all around you starts to become less noticeable. As a result of your realization that approbation is a fragile emotion that can transform into judgment in an instant, you no longer have to worry about being disapproved of. After coming to the realization that people who are intent on misinterpreting you would do so regardless of how carefully you speak, you decide to cease explaining your reasons for doing what you are doing. You will no longer be emotionally dependent on reactions since your energy will no longer flow outward. Rather, it will be grounded inward. According to a quote attributed to Seneca, we suffer more often in their imagination than in reality. Give that some thought. It is not the misunderstanding itself that causes the most of the suffering you experience when you are misunderstood. Rather, it is your connection to being perceived in a particular manner that causes the majority thereof. Imagine that other people have a negative opinion of you. You can almost hear their criticism, their whispers, and their uncertainty. Not because it is true, but because your mind keeps replaying it over and over again. You are the one who suffers. According to Stoicism, this imagined pain is more detrimental to your inner serenity than any actual blow, because it undermines your inner tranquility from the inside out. It is not the same thing as apathy, it's quite clear. The capacity to perceive reality without introducing unwarranted feelings is what it means. It is not that you cease caring when you detach. Rather, it is that you stop clutching. You learn to distinguish between the truth and the opinions of other people. You begin to understand that your value is not determined by the opinions of others. Choose not to be harmed, and you will not feel harmed. Marcus Aurelius stated in his book Meditations, "You shouldn't feel hurt, and you haven't been hurt at all." Detachment in its purest form is what you have here. Realizing that emotional hurt requires your consent and that you have the ability to choose whether or not to give it is the realization. Those who adhered to the Stoic philosophy were aware that attachment to external approval was the source of sorrow. Epictetus stated that the only way to achieve tranquility is to concentrate solely on the things that are under your control, which includes your thoughts, actions, and judgments. Everything else, including people's thoughts, their responses, and their comprehension, is what belongs to the outside world, and as a result, it is the responsibility of fate. Clinging to things that are beyond your control is a certain way to attract instability into your internal world. On the other hand, when you distance yourself from them, you make room for tranquility. Moreover, here is the paradox. The instant you remove yourself from the need to be understood, people begin to respect you more. Your silence becomes a mirror when you stop explaining yourself. and people are forced to confront their own anxieties. When you stop explaining yourself, your silence becomes a mirror. No longer are they able to influence you by using guilt, nor are they able to destabilize you by using criticism. You have moved beyond their sphere of influence. Despite the fact that they may label you as aloof, cold, or haughty, the reality is that you have gotten more centered. You are no longer revolving around the opinions of other people. Rather, they are revolving around your self-control. In order to achieve emotional autonomy, detachment is necessary. You are no longer influenced by every wave of applause or criticism, such as rising and falling. You cultivate what the Stoics referred to as apatheia, which is not the absence of feeling, but rather the mastery of emotional experience. Emotion is still present in your life, but it is no longer the driving force behind your actions. You see things in their true form, not in the way that your ego would like them to be. You act based on principles rather than on reactions. Seneca had the belief that the intelligent man is invulnerable since the source of his tranquility lies within himself. In his writing, he stated that no man can be harmed unless he allows it. You can construct this inner fortress by detaching yourself from other people and making the deliberate decision to cease giving your emotional power to other people. When you choose to stop explaining who you are, you stop allowing other people to enter your mind and rearrange the contents of your thoughts. Stop allowing their misunderstandings to determine how you feel about yourself. People frequently assume that detachment is synonymous with apathy. Stoic detachment, on the other hand, does not necessarily mean withdrawing from life. Rather, it means interacting with life on your own terms. Keeping one's composure in the face of turmoil, remaining cool in the midst of misunderstanding, and retaining one's goal in the face of provocation are all important aspects of this. When you detach yourself from anything, you get the ability to observe rather than absorb. To observe the opinions of other individuals without considering them one's own, so that you can listen to their loudness without allowing it to disrupt your silence. Reminding himself, Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind. It is not the events that occur outside of you." Recognize this, and you will discover the strength you need. Detachment can be summed up just like that. There is no escape from reality. Rather, it is the mastery of reality. The realization that your tranquility is not dependent on the feelings, viewpoints, or misunderstandings of other people is what it means. You should therefore allow people to call you cold since you have not explained yourself. Be sure to grin when they accuse you of being arrogant for establishing boundaries. Simply nod your head in agreement when they tell you that you have evolved. You have progressed beyond the urge to be seen and have entered the realm of the stability that comes with being secure. Not only does detachment mark the beginning of peace, but it also marks the end of connection. When you are in a world that is obsessed with being understood, it is what makes you resistant to change. And once you've experienced that peace, you'll never again be willing to give it up in exchange for approval. Number 6. Living without explanation is living with purpose. The moment you stop trying to explain who you are, that is the moment you start living your life with a sense of purpose. When you reach this point, your energy will shift from attempting to be understood to trying to be understood. Your path is no longer something you have to defend to others who were never meant to walk it with you. You no longer waste your breath doing so. Instead of spending hours defending your silence, your alone, or your actions, you no longer have to do so. You instead direct that energy inside toward your own development, your own peace, and the accomplishment of your objective. According to a quote attributed to Marcus Aurelius, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." This is the core of the Stoic teachings and discipline. This indicates that you not owe anyone an explanation for the way in which you choose to live, but you do owe yourself responsible for the person that you are transitioning into. The Stoics emphasize that you can only control your own goals, and neither can you influence the understanding of other people. In addition, when your acts are consistent and your motives are honest, it is no longer required to provide an explanation. Living a life without an explanation is not self-centeredness. Rather, it is alignment. It is the knowledge that truth does not require someone to defend it. Rather, it is something that must simply be lived. You are no longer required to provide an explanation for why you choose to avoid specific individuals, why you limit the number of people in your circle, or why you prefer tranquility over loudness. You refrain from over-elaborating on your principles to people who do not share them. You must cease making an effort to demonstrate your value to people who are oblivious to it. The alternative is that you start living your life with a calm conviction that is grounded, purposeful, and free. In his writings, Seneca stated that the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. Every time you are preoccupied with explaining yourself to other people, you are living in that expectation. You are expecting that they will understand you tomorrow, but you are giving up your peace of mind right now. A life devoid of explanation helps you to remain rooted in the here and now. It compels you to behave on the basis of principles rather than perceptions. You stop putting on a show for the purpose of gaining acceptance and begin practicing genuineness. To live in this manner is to comprehend that there is no need for defense of purpose. The stillness is the voice of purpose. It is able to move accurately. It is not something that cries out to be noticed. Rather, when it is consistent, it commands respect. Your actions are your statement, and your outcomes are your explanation. When you stop explaining every move you make, you teach the world something profound, that your actions are your statement about yourself. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that recognition from others is ephemeral, and that the opinions of others become less authoritative with the passage of time. In a short amount of time, you will have forgotten everything, and everything will feel the same way about you. That may sound depressing, but it is actually rather liberating. You stop living to satisfy other people and begin living to gratify yourself when you come to the realization that no one's opinion is actually lasting. Acting is something you do not because you want to be applauded, but rather because it is the correct thing to do. Stoics were people who conducted their lives according to the concept that the ultimate form of wisdom in life is to connect your actions with your principles. Due to the fact that it is obvious in the manner in which you hold yourself, this alignment eliminates the opportunity for explanation. The manner in which you respond to disagreements, the manner in which you maintain composure in the face of intense pressure, all of these things become live testaments to your ideology. When you make the decision to live without explanation, you regain the most valuable resource, time. Previously, time was spent trying to persuade people, but today that time is being spent creating, improving, and living. The argument is replaced with discipline, the chatter is replaced with creation, and the defense becomes direction. It is clear to you that individuals who are intended to comprehend you will not require explanations, since they will be able to perceive your nature through the activities that you take. No matter what you say, those individuals who do not believe in something will never be persuaded. When you are peaceful, your language becomes your own. When you remain silent, you are making a statement. The outcomes you achieve become your defense. Because you have outgrown people who are determined to misunderstand you, you no longer engage in arguments with them. In addition, as you continue to do so, you begin to exude a quiet strength that garners respect, even from those who are critical of you. The words of Seneca were, "Associate yourself with those who will help you become a better man." Welcome those individuals who you have the potential to better. As a result of living without explanation, your reality will automatically be filtered. Whoever is respectful of your silence is the kind of person who should be included in your inner circle. Those individuals who insist on constant justification will never accept it. When you stop trying to explain who you are, your attention moves from validation to visional thinking. As opposed to begging, you start to construct, and you start to lead rather than follow. After you have stopped reacting to other people, you will begin to respond to life itself. This is the point at when performance is replaced with purpose, and life starts to feel more meaningful, tranquil, and liberating. Living a life without of explanation is not seclusion. Rather, it is mastery. It is the decision to be understood by oneself rather than by the majority of people out there. It is the realization that peace will never be achieved by agreeing with someone, but rather by aligning oneself with them. And when your life begins to mirror that alignment, words will no longer be essential. Mostly due to the fact that when your actions speak with integrity, when your silence contains strength, and when your outcomes echo your truth, you become untouchable. When you are peaceful, your language becomes your own. The outcomes you achieve become your defense. And the peace that you have, the calm that is unwavering and unshakable, becomes your biggest roar. When you stop trying to explain yourself, you cease exchanging your power for someone else's. You make the decision to stop allowing other people to determine your identity, your worth, and your ambitions. You transform into what the Stoics envisioned, a stronghold of tranquility in the midst of a chaotic world. Seneca once was quoted as saying, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man can be perfected without trials." You can think of the difficulty of being misunderstood as the friction that you use to polish your spirit. Your silence should not be explained. Don't try to justify your tranquility. Rather than trying to be understood, you should strive to be free. Because when you eventually stop explaining yourself, everything changes. The noise goes away, your focus comes back, and your life starts to align with a purpose that is silent and unstoppable.